I'm Rebecca Lawson, 31 years old, and I never imagined that one day I'd be homeless while still living in my parents' house. I stood in the hallway surrounded by boxes of my own belongings, hearing my mother say they'd given my bedroom to my younger sister. She said it like it was no big deal. You can just sleep on the floor for now until you figure things out. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded. And that was the moment I started planning something they'd never see coming. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been treated like an afterthought by your own family. I grew up in Rochester, New York, in a small house that always felt just a little too crowded, but still full of warmth. My parents, Linda and Carl, weren't wealthy, but they worked hard and expected the same from me and my sister. We were raised to be polite to help around the house and to never act like we were better than anyone else. I took those lessons to heart. After high school, I got into UC Berkeley and pursued a degree in architecture. I graduated with honors, had my name up on the department's wall, and I thought things were finally lining up. But the job market collapsed the same year I walked the stage. Construction firms were freezing hiring or laying people off altogether. My savings started draining faster than I expected, and after months of dead ends, I packed up and moved back east, hoping it'd only be for a few weeks. At first, my parents welcomed me home with open arms. My mom made sandwiches for interviews, and my dad gave notes on my cover letters. They'd saved my room just the way I left it. My college awards still hung neatly above the bed, and my model structures lined the shelves. My younger sister Hannah was still in high school back then, a senior full of big dreams and loud opinions. We'd always been close, even though we were nothing alike. I liked quiet mornings and planning things out. Hannah loved noise and late-night gossip. She'd sprawl across my bed and ask about colleges or show me texts from boys she didn't like but couldn't stop talking to. I didn't mind. After so long away, it felt good to be needed again. Every day I sent out resumes, followed up on leads, even attended local networking mixers. In between, I pulled my weight around the house, cooked 3 nights a week, deep cleaned the bathrooms on Sundays, helped my dad repair the old deck. I even chipped in $300 a month for groceries and bills, just enough to help without going broke. The cracks started showing over dinner one night. My mom was glowing as she set the table, talking about how Hannah had just been invited to her school's honors program. "It'll really help with college applications," she said, putting an extra chicken thigh on my sister's plate. "She was in honors, too," my dad said, motioning to me. My mother just nodded. "Yes, but it's different now. It's much more competitive." Hannah shot me an apologetic look. I gave a small smile and changed the subject. There wasn't any point in making a scene, especially not with that interview coming up, the one with Hartman Design Group. I'd spent hours prepping for it. My portfolio was solid, and the firm's work in sustainable commercial spaces matched my passion. And for once, everything clicked. The interview went better than I could have hoped. Marissa Hartman herself said my approach struck the right balance between beauty and practicality. "We'll be in touch within 2 weeks," she said, shaking my hand. Driving home, I let myself feel it. Real hope. That night I made dinner for everyone, lasagna from scratch, just like Mom used to make. We opened a bottle of wine. For a few hours it almost felt like we were a real family again. Dad raised his glass and said, "To Rebecca, soon to be the newest architect at Hartman Design." I wish I'd known then that it was the last dinner we'd share like that, because within 2 days, everything would change, and this time, no one would be offering me a plate. 2 days after that dinner, I got home a little later than usual. I'd spent the morning shadowing a local contractor and had picked up groceries on the way back, planning to make something simple for dinner. When I opened the side door, the house felt oddly still. No TV noise, no music upstairs, just that thick kind of quiet that makes you pause. I started up the steps, holding the grocery bags, and that's when I saw it. Boxes. My boxes. Stacked in the hallway half open. Clothes, shoes, my sketchbooks, some of them barely packed, just tossed together like they'd been in the way. My first thought was that maybe something happened. Maybe the closet had collapsed or the ceiling had leaked. I dropped the bags and went straight to my room. Only it wasn't my room anymore. The bed was gone. My twin frame, the one Dad and I had built back when I was 12, replaced by Hannah's queen size. The architecture prints I'd hung years ago were missing, and in their place concert posters, fairy lights, a vanity table covered in lip gloss and hair clips. The carpet was new. The walls had been repainted. Light lavender, not my color, not my room. I just stood there. My mom came up behind me with a laundry basket balanced on her hip. "Oh, you're back," she said. "We moved your things out today. Hannah needs more space this year." I turned toward her. "You moved me out." She shifted the basket like this was just an ordinary conversation. "Well, you were gone all day. We figured you'd understand. You're out job hunting and networking most of the time anyway." My dad came out of the master bedroom still in his slippers. "The living room floor should be fine for now. We've got that old sleeping bag from our camping trips." I didn't say anything. Hannah stepped into the doorway, twirling her hair around her finger. "I just have so much college prep stuff." It made more sense. I looked at her, then back at the boxes in the hallway. "I've been paying rent," I said quietly. "I cook, I clean. I'm not just here." "We know," Mom said, "and we appreciate it. But this is Hannah's last year at home. She's at a very pivotal time." That night, I laid the sleeping bag out between the coffee table and the TV stand. I folded up a blanket and used it as a pillow. Every time someone walked by, I had to curl in tighter so I wouldn't be in the way. The hardwood floor pressed into my ribs. The ceiling fan clicked overhead. Somewhere upstairs, I could hear Hannah's music through the vent. Around midnight, she was laughing on the phone. It drifted down the stairs like it always had, only now it came from what used to be my space. By morning, I had a crick in my neck and a dull ache across my lower back. I rolled up the sleeping bag and shoved it into the hall closet before anyone came down for coffee. Nobody said anything. Nobody looked surprised. Later, I heard my parents in Hannah's room, my old room with paint swatches. They were talking about a new desk, maybe floating shelves. "Lavender helps with focus," Mom said as she passed me in the kitchen. "Hannah thinks it'll be good for studying." I nodded, stirred my coffee, didn't say a word. Over dinner, they talked about her student council meetings and how well she was doing in advanced English. No one asked about my job search or the contractor I'd met that day. I had sent a follow-up email to Hartman that morning, but I kept it to myself. The next few weeks were the same day after day. I'd set up the sleeping bag after everyone went to bed, roll it back up before they came downstairs. My toiletries were moved into a plastic basket I carried back and forth from the coat closet. My clothes stayed in boxes. I asked once if I could use the hall closet. "That's for guests," my dad said. We didn't have guests. When I tried to talk about a new firm that had reached out, my mom nodded, then turned the conversation back to Hannah's prom committee. I cleaned the guest bathroom before a video interview and missed the first 5 minutes because my mom said Hannah's study group might need it. I showed up late, flustered, trying to sound professional. One afternoon, I came home to find 4 teenage girls on the floor of the living room, my sleeping area, watching a movie. "Oh, this is my sister Hannah," said when I walked in. "She's like between things right now." One of the girls looked at me. "Wait, do you actually sleep here?" "It's temporary," I said. Hannah smirked. "Yeah, until she figures out her life." That night, I cleaned up after dinner like always. My parents were in the kitchen flipping through a home design catalog for Hannah's new furniture. I kept my eyes on the sink. I didn't say anything when my mom told me I'd forgotten to sweep under the dining table. I just grabbed the broom and handled it. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was from Hartman. They were offering me the junior architect position, $62,000 a year benefits, and a start date in 2 weeks. I stood at the counter with the phone in my hand, heart racing, but I said nothing. just turned the screen face down and kept chopping vegetables. "Something important?" my mom asked. "No, just junk mail," I said. That weekend we had family over, my Aunt Patricia and Uncle George, a few cousins I hadn't seen since Christmas. I was setting the table when my aunt leaned over. "How are you settling in at home?" she asked gently. "She's sleeping in the living room," my mom answered before I could speak. "Hannah needed the space, senior year and all." My aunt blinked. "I see. And your things, wherever they fit," I said. Later, when I was washing dishes, Aunt Patricia came over quietly. "This isn't right, Rebecca," she said. "I'm fine," I replied, not looking up. "You're their daughter, not a house guest. I've got it handled," I told her, "but thank you." That night I passed by my parents' bedroom. Their door was slightly open, and I heard them talking. "I worry about Rebecca," my dad said. "She needs to try harder," my mom replied. "When we were her age, we already had a house and a baby on the way." "It's a different world now," he said. "She's not exactly hustling," she said. "We warned her not to go into architecture." I stepped away before I heard the rest. I lay on the living room floor, staring at the ceiling fan, the cold rising through the floorboards into my bones. And that's when it started. The idea. Not a confrontation. Not a fight. Something quiet. Precise. Permanent. Something they wouldn't forget. I kept the routine. Rolled out the sleeping bag after everyone had gone upstairs. Rolled it back up before anyone came down. I folded it tight and slipped it behind the hall closet door, right between the vacuum cleaner and a stack of old photo albums. My body adjusted to the cold floor before my mind ever did. By the second week, I'd stopped waking up feeling rested. I felt stiff, foggy. Sometimes it took me a minute to remember where I was. The living room wasn't dark enough to sleep well. Light from the street came in through the blinds, and the fridge made a loud click every time it cycled. At night, I heard the heater sputtering, the pipes knocking, Hannah's phone buzzing upstairs. Most mornings I'd be up before dawn, brushing my teeth quietly and gathering the caddy of toiletries I now kept in the coat closet. I started showering fast, worried about taking up the bathroom too long. Hannah's skincare products had started to spread out across the counter, and more than once I heard my mom remind me not to leave my things out since your sister needs the space. My clothes stayed in boxes along the hallway wall. I tried to keep them neat, but without drawers or hangers, everything ended up wrinkled. I asked once about using part of the hall closet. "That needs to stay open for guests," Dad said. We hadn't had guests in months. Dinner was the same every night. Hannah would talk about school, college essays, her upcoming interview with the admissions officer from state. My parents would nod, ask questions, offer ideas. I'd sit there quietly. They never asked about the email I'd gotten from Hartman or what I was working on or how my applications were going. One evening, I mentioned I'd gotten a reply from another architecture firm, one based out of Buffalo, that wanted to meet. "That's good," my dad said, then turned back to Hannah. "Have you thought about what you'll wear to your interview next week?" I finished my plate and did the dishes like always. The only thing that changed was how invisible I felt. On the third weekend, I came home from a job fair. It had been a long day, and I'd walked for hours collecting business cards and talking to firm reps who all seemed a little too busy to care. I just wanted to sit down and breathe. But when I walked through the door, the living room was full. 4 girls I didn't recognize were spread across the floor, eating popcorn and watching a movie. One of them had her feet where my sleeping bag usually went. "Oh," Hannah said when I walked in. "That's my sister. She's kind of between things right now." One of the girls, tall with bright red nails, looked at me. "Wait, do you actually sleep in here?" "It's just temporary," I said, setting my bag down. "That's kind of depressing," she said. Hannah laughed. "She's figuring things out." That night I waited until the last of them left around 11. Then I laid my sleeping bag down again and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. I wasn't sure when I finally fell asleep, but when I woke up, my back ached so badly I had to stretch out on the floor just to move. The expectations at home didn't change. I still cleaned the bathrooms, vacuumed the living room, and cooked dinner 3 times a week. One morning I was getting ready for a video interview. I'd ironed my one good blouse the night before and was brushing my hair when my mom knocked on the bathroom door. "Rebecca, did you remember to clean in here? I did it yesterday." "Well, it needs another wipe down. Hannah's study group is coming and they'll probably use this one." I missed the first 5 minutes of my interview because I was on my knees scrubbing a sink that was already clean. By the time the 4th week rolled around, I'd stopped talking at dinner. I still sat at the table, still ate with everyone, but I didn't offer anything. My parents didn't notice. Hannah did. Sometimes she'd glance at me like she wanted to say something, but then the moment would pass. I stayed out of the house more. I started leaving earlier for networking events, even when I didn't have one. I sat in coffee shops, walked through parks, stayed late at the library downtown, anywhere that didn't have lavender walls and my name missing from a door. Then came the weekend my aunt and uncle visited. They lived in Albany and only came by once or twice a year. Aunt June was the only person in my family who ever seemed genuinely curious about my work. She used to ask for pictures of my models, would text me articles about eco-friendly building design. She arrived with her usual smile and a bag of muffins she'd picked up from a bakery along the way. "How's everything going with you, Rebecca?" she asked, handing me a lemon poppy seed. Before I could answer, my mom cut in. "Oh, she's camping out in the living room right now. We gave her room to Hannah. She needed more space for college prep." Aunt June's smile faltered. "I see," she said quietly. Later, when we were alone in the kitchen, she leaned in. "This doesn't feel right," she said. "I'm fine," I told her. "They shouldn't be treating you like this. Do you need help?" "I mean it. I could spot you first month's rent. You could find a small place, even a studio." I shook my head. "I'm okay." "Really?" She didn't push. But as she left that night, she hugged me tighter than usual. The next evening, I walked past my parents' bedroom on the way back from brushing my teeth. The door was half open. I heard my dad's voice. "I'm worried about Rebecca. She needs to try harder," my mom said. We had a house and 2 kids at her age. My dad sighed. "Things were different then. She chose architecture. We told her it was too risky. She could have gone into accounting like her cousin Sarah. She should have moved out by now," he said. "She can't stay on the living room floor forever." That night, I lay still beneath the thin sleeping bag and looked up at the ceiling until my eyes blurred. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything. Just cold and tired. But that's when it clicked. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't plead or try to explain. That hadn't worked. What I needed wasn't a louder voice. What I needed was space. And just a few blocks away, there was a quiet little fixer-upper with a yard, one that shared a property line with the house I'd grown up in. I called a realtor the next morning before the sun came up. Her name was Melissa. She picked up on the second ring. I told her I wanted to see any homes available in my parents' neighborhood, specifically anything within walking distance. She asked if I had a price range. I said yes. I just accepted a new job. She didn't press for details. Later that afternoon, we pulled up in front of a weathered one-story with a crooked mailbox and a for sale sign leaning sideways in the yard, beige siding, overgrown grass, a cracked path that led to a faded red door. Melissa adjusted her clipboard. "It's been sitting for a while. Needs work." We stepped inside. The air smelled like dust and old paint. The kitchen hadn't been touched since the late 80s, yellow linoleum floors cabinets with peeling laminate and a stove that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The living room had sagging blinds and mismatched carpeting, but the bones were solid, and the lot was generous, just over a 1/4 acre. The backyard opened up wide and flat directly behind my parents' property. I stood at the back window and looked across the fence. I could see the edge of my childhood backyard, the one where I'd planted a tomato garden at 13. I remembered where the old picnic table used to sit. I'm interested, I said. Melissa raised her eyebrows but wrote it down. I called the loan officer that evening. His name was Richard, and I'd met him once before at a local housing seminar back in college. I told him about the offer from Hartman, my credit score, and the savings account my grandmother had left me before she passed. He ran the numbers. "You're in good shape," he said. "Even with the fixer-upper condition, it's a smart investment." The paperwork started the next morning. I scheduled the inspection on my lunch break and met with a contractor by the end of the week. His name was Daniel, and he walked through the house with a pencil behind his ear and a measuring tape that never left his hand. "The kitchen bathroom and master need full overhauls," I told him. "Those are first priority. What about the backyard?" "Later," I said. "I have something in mind, but I want to take my time." The closing date was set. I didn't say a word at home. Each day I kept the routine. Sleeping on the floor, cooking dinner, wiping down countertops. I still packed my sleeping bag up every morning and slid it behind the vacuum. No one asked where I went during the day. What they didn't know was that I had already moved most of my things into the new house. Bit by bit, 2 boxes at a time, I used early mornings and long lunch breaks. By the time the deed was signed, I had keys in my pocket and paint samples in the trunk of my car. At Hartman, things moved fast. My manager looped me in on a mid-rise office renovation the week I started. It was a sustainable build, lots of reclaimed materials, energy-efficient systems, and green roofing. I stayed late most evenings, partly because I wanted to learn, partly because I didn't want to go home. My coworkers were kind, curious but never intrusive. Marissa, the firm's founder, stopped by my desk one afternoon and nodded at my design revisions. "You think in clean lines," she said. "That's rare. You see form and function at the same time." I thanked her. Didn't say much else. Every evening I stopped by the new house after work. Daniel and his team made steady progress. The carpet came up first, revealing hardwood underneath. The wallpaper was stripped, the kitchen gutted, and new plumbing was roughed in by week 3. I picked quartz countertops and subway tile for the bathroom, ordered matte black fixtures and dimmable lighting. I kept it simple, uncluttered, quiet. No one noticed when I started staying out later. No one asked about the paint under my fingernails or why I sometimes came home with the smell of drywall on my jacket. At dinner one evening, my mom smiled at Hannah and said, "Your room's finally finished. Doesn't the lavender look nice in the evening light?" "It's calming," Hannah said. I nodded, sipped my water. By week 5, my new home was nearly complete. Just one thing left. I called a pool contractor. Her name was Heather, and she had a design portfolio full of clean, modern lines. We walked through the backyard together on a Wednesday morning. The grass had been cleared, stakes marked where the plumbing would go. "I want something sleek," I told her. 16 by 32, small waterfall at the far end. Heather made notes. "Any specific placement?" "Yes." I pointed to the side of the yard that faced my parents' house. "Right here." She didn't comment, just nodded. "We'll need permits," she said. "Excavation will be noisy." "That's fine." We signed the contract. I chose pale gray stone for the edging and a tile finish that shimmered blue under sunlight. On my final night sleeping on the floor, I lay still a long time. The hum of the refrigerator, the hallway light seeping in under the edge of the door, the couch cushion pressing into my shoulder, every sound, every discomfort felt sharper somehow. At 5:30 the next morning, I packed everything. 2 suitcases, 1 backpack, my toiletries, a box of books. The sleeping bag stayed behind, folded neatly in the closet. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Found my own place, won't be needing the floor anymore. No other details. By 7 Hazuro, I'd dropped my bags at the new house. By 8 Hazuro, I was at my desk. I didn't check my phone until lunch. 3 texts from Mom, 2 from Dad, 1 from Hannah. "Where are your things? Call us when you get this. What do you mean you moved out? Did you really leave? Where did you go? I silenced the phone and went back to work. That evening, I drove home. My home. Their lights were on across the fence. I could see silhouettes moving in the kitchen window. I carried my bags in, slowly taking my time. I'd just finished setting down the second suitcase when someone knocked on the front door. Through the peephole, I saw my parents. Mom had her arms crossed. Dad looked confused. I opened the door, stayed in the doorway. "You bought a house?" my dad asked. "Yes," next door Mom said. "Yes. When did this happen?" 6 weeks ago, the day I accepted the job at Hartman. Neither of them spoke. I waited. "You never told us," Mom finally said. "You never asked," I replied. They looked past me, trying to see inside. "Can we come in?" Dad asked. "No," I said. "Not today." Behind them, Hannah stood at the sidewalk, watching. I stepped back inside and closed the door. The digging started on a Monday morning, right at 8 o'clock. The crew from Heather's company rolled in with a compact excavator and a dump truck. They set up bright orange markers along the fence line, then started cutting into the ground. From my kitchen window, I could see the top of my parents' garage. I didn't have to look far to imagine what they could see from theirs. By lunch, the hole was taking shape. That evening, I got home later than usual. The machines were gone, but the dirt mound they'd left behind ran nearly 12 feet long. As I stepped out of my car, I glanced next door. My dad was in their backyard with the hose, but his eyes kept drifting in my direction. He didn't wave. The next day, the plumbing crew showed up. Then the rebar, then the concrete shell. The noise wasn't constant, but it was enough just a few hours a day, like a gentle reminder. No one from my family said anything that first week, not until Friday. I was weeding the front garden bed when my dad came walking over with a small box in his hands. "Need help with those?" he asked, nodding toward the flowers. I didn't answer right away. "Sure," I said, pointing to a spot near the mailbox. "Those can go there." We worked side by side for a while. It was quiet except for the sound of cars passing in the distance. He brushed soil off his hands. "You've done a lot here. It's looking good. Thanks." A few more minutes passed. Then, without looking at me, he said I was wrong, Rebecca, about the way we handled things. I kept pressing mulch around the base of a hydrangea. I shouldn't have let your mom move your things without talking to you. And that floor that wasn't right. I sat back on my heels and met his eyes. "No, it wasn't." He nodded. "I got caught up in helping Hannah. I forgot that you still needed help, too." I didn't say anything. He stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans. "Anyway, if you ever need anything around here, repairs, heavy lifting, I'm right next door." I gave a small nod. It wasn't everything, but it was something. My mother came by the next day. I heard the knock on the back door, the one that faced the pool site. She held a plastic container. "I made those lemon bars you like." I opened the door but didn't step aside. Her eyes moved past me to the boxes near the breakfast nook. "You're really settling in." "I am. I was thinking," she said, "maybe we could all have dinner sometime, just us. Talk things through." I didn't respond. She shifted the container in her hands. "Families go through things, Rebecca. It wasn't personal. We just had to make room. It felt personal." She exhaled slow and tight. "Well, you certainly made your point. That pool is visible from every window in our kitchen." I didn't reply. "Are you trying to send a message?" she asked. I looked at her steady. "I'm creating a space that works for me. That's all." She nodded slowly, but didn't look convinced. "Well, welcome to the neighborhood," she said, holding out the lemon bars. I took them with a quiet, "Thank you," and closed the door. The next morning, I was outside reviewing tile samples when Heather walked up with her clipboard. "Want to see the stone for the waterfall feature?" she asked. We walked to the back of the lot where the form had already been outlined. She laid out a few options: natural slate tumbled granite and a gray-blue composite that caught the light. "That one," I said, pointing. She smiled. "Good choice. Should reflect beautifully at dusk." We finalized the schedule. The tile crew would begin Monday. The waterfall basin would be poured by midweek. From their house, my parents could now see the full shape of the pool. The coping was in. The lights had been tested. Even with the dust and plywood barriers, the layout was clear. I kept to myself, said hello when we crossed paths in the driveway, accepted baked goods when they showed up on my porch, but I never asked anyone inside. Hannah texted me the following Thursday. "Mom and Dad are still arguing. About you, about all of it. I know," I wrote back. "They're saying you went overboard, that you're making a scene. I'm not. I don't think you are either." That weekend, I saw her standing at the edge of my driveway. She had a coffee cup in one hand and a folder tucked under her arm. "You busy?" she asked. I nodded toward the porch. "Come sit." She handed me the cup and took the other chair. "I've been thinking," she said. "About college, about everything." I waited. "You were always the responsible one, the one who planned ahead. I didn't get that when I was younger." "You were 17, I said. "Still. I could have said something. I shouldn't have let them treat you that way." She looked at the folder in her lap. "I'm applying to state, and I'm thinking about majoring in architecture." I raised an eyebrow. She smiled. "If that's not weird." "It's not weird. Mom says I should do business instead. Says architecture is too competitive." I didn't answer right away. Then I looked over and said, "You get to decide what you're capable of. Not Mom. Not anyone else." She nodded. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft churn of the waterfall pump as it cycled through its test run. "Do you think we could ever go back to being close?" she asked. Like before, I thought about that. About late-night talks and shared playlists and trips to the lake. "We can try," I said. We stayed on the porch until the sun dipped behind the trees. The pool was finished by early June. Smooth stone edging soft underwater lights, a quiet waterfall that spilled into a deep blue basin. From my bedroom window, I could see the water catching the light at dusk, calm and clean. My parents could see it too from their kitchen and from the upstairs hallway window that faced my yard. The view was unobstructed. The first pool gathering happened on the summer solstice. I invited co-workers from Hartman neighbors who had waved hello since the day I moved in, and a few friends from my architecture program who had settled nearby after graduation. Lawn chairs circled the edge of the water. Music played softly from speakers tucked near the garden beds. Someone brought sparkling lemonade in a glass pitcher. By 6 o'clock, the smell of grilled vegetables and seasoned chicken had drifted toward the fence line. From the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. Next door, my mom paused by their kitchen sink, her hand still on a dish towel. Dad stepped onto their back patio and stood there for a long time, staring across the yard. No one on my guest list was family. The conversations that night circled around design work, recent builds, and the next project. Hartman had lined up an eco-residential complex outside Buffalo. Around 9, Marissa stood up and tapped her glass. "I just want to say this is beautiful," she said, motioning to the patio. "Rebecca's design eye is rare, and we're lucky to have her leading our new green housing build." People clapped. I nodded quiet, not sure what to say. Later that night, as the party wound down, Aunt June pulled me aside near the garden. She hugged me tight and whispered, "You built this. You didn't let anything stop you." I nodded again. The words caught somewhere in my throat. The next few weeks settled into something steady. I worked. I swam most evenings. I read on the porch when it was cool enough. And slowly I stopped thinking about the living room floor. It became something distant, like a photograph I didn't need to look at anymore. Then one Sunday afternoon, I was in the front yard, deadheading roses when Hannah walked up the driveway. "They're arguing again," she said. "About you, about the pool, about how it all looks from their side." I dusted my gloves on my jeans and stood up. "I keep hearing the same two things," she continued. "Dad says they messed up. Mom says you're overreacting." I walked with her toward the porch. "The thing is," she said, "I think it was already broken before you moved out. You just made it impossible for them to pretend." We sat on the top step. She pulled a crumpled envelope from her bag. "I got my acceptance letter," she said. "State University, full ride. That's great. I haven't told them yet. They're too busy going in circles." She looked over toward the fence. "Do you think they'll ever get it?" "I don't know." She picked at the edge of the envelope. "I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing what I'm capable of, not letting them decide for me." I waited. "I still want to study architecture." I nodded. "Then you should." She looked at me quiet for a moment. "You really changed." I looked out at the pool. The surface was still except for a few leaves drifting across the top. I had to. She left not long after. As I watched her walk down the drive, I noticed the way her steps seemed more certain than before. The following Friday, my mom appeared at my back door again. This time she didn't have anything in her hands. She glanced at the water. "This seems excessive." I didn't answer. "Are you trying to make a point?" she asked. I turned and looked at her. "I'm living my life. You're being dramatic, Rebecca." I didn't respond. She stepped a little closer. "It was temporary. The floor. We were just trying to help Hannah. It wasn't meant to hurt you. I didn't say anything at first. Then I said, 'You didn't ask if it hurt.'" She looked away toward the trees. "So this is what we are now, neighbors who don't speak." I looked at the water. "We speak." She opened her mouth to say something else, then changed her mind. "Well," she said finally, "it's your home." I nodded. "Yes, it is." She left without another word. Later that evening, I turned on the underwater lights. They shimmered blue against the dark. I floated on my back, arms wide, listening to the hush of the waterfall. It was the first time in months that I felt the kind of quiet that didn't ache. 1 year after I moved out, I hosted a housewarming. It wasn't rushed. I waited until every room was finished, walls painted, shelves hung, drawer pulls chosen with care. The pool had been cleaned and sealed twice. The flower beds bloomed in color. Even the garden path had been reset with stone pavers and lined with soft ground lights. The invitation list was deliberate. My team from Hartman, a few of the neighbors who'd lent me tools or advice, and people I'd met through community design events. Aunt June and Uncle Pete drove in from Albany, and Hannah, she came early to help set up. She brought fresh rolls from a bakery near her summer job and set them out on a white ceramic tray. "You know they're going to notice," she said, glancing toward our parents' house. "I know. Mom mentioned it once. I didn't say anything." "Thank you." Guests arrived steadily. Voices filled the yard. A few wandered inside, complimenting the light fixtures or the custom shelving in the hallway. Someone asked about the paint color in the kitchen. I told them it was called sea glass, though it looked different in morning light than it did at dusk. Around 4 o'clock, the patio was full. The grill was going. The pool shimmered with movement. Marissa raised her glass once everyone had plates in hand. "I've worked with a lot of designers," she said, "but Rebecca brings something rare to every space intention. She doesn't just build. She restores, shapes, listens." She looked around. "This home speaks for itself." People clapped. I nodded, thanked her. As twilight settled, I stepped away for a moment. Just a few minutes alone by the pool, watching the waterfall slip over the stone edge. I felt the quiet before I saw it. A shape at the back fence. My father stood in his yard a few feet from the property line. His arms were crossed, his posture uncertain. When he noticed I'd seen him, he raised one hand, almost a wave. I returned the gesture, just a small nod. No invitation, no message. He stood there a little longer, then turned and walked back toward their house. I watched the porch light flicker on as he disappeared through the screen door. Later that night, after the last of the guests left, Hannah helped gather glasses from around the pool. "I forgot to tell you," she said, holding a tray against her chest. "I registered for classes. Yeah, Intro to Drafting, History of Architecture, and Studio Fundamentals. Full load. You ready?" "I think so." She hesitated. "Mom said it's too ambitious, that I'll burn out." I stopped and looked at her. "You don't need to let her decide what you're capable of." She nodded. I remembered that. "Because you said it once." She turned toward the house, toward the lights glowing in the windows. "You made all this," she said, "and you didn't let them talk you out of it." "No." She gave a small smile. "You know the pool used to feel like a message. Now it just looks like peace." I didn't answer. She leaned the tray on the table and turned to go. "I'll text you after my first day. I'd like that." I stayed outside for a while longer, collecting napkins and folding towels. Then I walked through the house room by room, turning off lights. Each space quiet. Lived in. Mine. In the entryway mirror, I caught my reflection, shoulders straighter, face softer than I remembered from a year ago. I looked like someone who had learned how to take up space. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom that night, looking out toward the backyard. The pool lights cast soft, moving reflections across the ceiling, cool blues and pale silver that shimmered with the rhythm of the water. Everything was quiet. The last of the dishes had been put away. The towels were folded. The lights in the hallway were dimmed. From next door, not a sound. I slipped into bed and lay still, listening to the hush of the waterfall. Not loud, not showy, just steady. It had taken time to get here. Longer than I expected in some ways. But the feeling I had in that moment was one I'd never known on the living room floor of my parents' house. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had finally made space for myself and claimed it without apology. In the months that followed, things with my parents stayed polite. They waved from the driveway. Sometimes they sent a plate over during holidays. But we never went back to the version of family we'd once been. And that was all right. Real reconciliation can't happen without recognition. And for them, that truth was still sitting just out of reach. But Hannah kept showing up. She'd come by after classes to study on my patio sometimes, bringing early drafts of her design projects. She still second-guessed herself, but not in the same way. She asked questions. She sketched with a sureness that surprised her. One evening, as she packed up her things, she looked around my kitchen and said, "This doesn't feel like a house anymore. It feels like a home." I didn't reply right away, just nodded, because I knew what she meant. This place wasn't just drywall and tile. It was a marker, a boundary, a declaration. I had built it with my own 2 hands, and with every decision, every color, every line, I'd reminded myself that dignity isn't something someone gives you. It's something you claim, quietly, consistently, and sometimes without anyone else clapping for it. The floor I slept on didn't define me. It revealed what I would no longer accept. And that was the beginning, not the end. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself from something that hurt, if you've ever had to draw a line where none existed before, I hope this story reminded you that it's never too late. You deserve room to breathe. You deserve to be seen. And you deserve to choose what comes next. If this story spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experience in the comments or pass this along to someone who might need it. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one about growth, courage, and quiet strength, go ahead and subscribe. We'll be here. Thanks for listening. And wherever you are tonight, I hope you're home.